So yeah, thanks so much for joining, everybody. The first speaker is myself this evening. I'm kicking things off, just giving you a whistle-stop tour of all things Hedgehog Street. So it's 5 past. It's probably, oh yeah, I might get started, and then there'll probably still be people coming in, but they can just sort of join, maybe catch up later on all the things they've missed. So yeah, thanks so much for joining. Okay, so I'll give a quick bit of information about Hedgehog Street. I'm sure you all know what Hedgehog Street is because you're here this evening. You've obviously heard of us before. So Hedgehog Street is a joint campaign between 2 British conservation charities. So it's between the People's Trust for Endangered Species and the British Hedgehog Preservation Society. Thanks to donations from Dillisbury, who was a BBC Wildlife Natural History producer. So it was thanks to donations from Dillisbury and the BBC Wildlife Grant, and that's where Hedgehog Street was born. So it was found, there was research that found that habitat fragmentation was really affecting hedgehogs in the UK. So Hedgehog Street was born to raise awareness of hedgehog highways, which are of course gaps in fences to allow hedgehogs to get through. And also just to raise awareness of how people can help in their gardens or in different areas. So we do now have over 100,000 registered hedgehog champions, which is fantastic. And that's people who've signed up for free and pledged to help hedgehogs. So yeah, fantastic. And a lot of those hedgehog champions here tonight, which is fantastic. So just a little bit of information about the 2 charities that have formed Hedgehog Street. So the People's Trust for Endangered Species, they work with endangered species in Britain and throughout the world. So they've got key species and habitats that they work with. So key species include, of course, hedgehogs, but they also do work with water voles, hazel dormice. So you might be able to see the hazel dormice on the right-hand side there. That's one I found on a survey a few weeks ago. They are as cute as they look when they're torpid like that. It's really, really good to see them on surveys. So hazel dormice, water voles, stag beetles, noble chafer beetles, and also they work with key habitats. So that includes hedgerows, wood pasture, traditional orchards, and also 2 nature reserves that PTS owns and manages. And there's also grants for international projects. So they have partners all over the world, and that includes working with snow leopards, turtles, lemurs, zebras, pangolins, all kinds of things. So lots of different wildlife covered. And that's the website there if you did want to find out a little bit more about PTS. So the British Hedgehog Preservation Society is the other charity. So they were founded back in 1982. And you may have seen they actually just celebrated their 40th birthday on Saturday. So that's just happened just before Hedgehog Awareness Week. So they were sharing lots of things on social media, getting lots of cool videos from celebrities, and they're asking people to help celebrate by granting hedgehoggy wishes. So lots of things that you can do in the garden to help them. And they're dedicated to helping and protecting our native UK hedgehog. So they do campaigns, advocacy, educational projects, one of which we'll be hearing from tonight, Hedgehog Friendly Campus. And they also fund research into hedgehogs and the decline, how we can all help them. They also maintain a list of rehabilitators in the UK. So if you find a hedgehog and you think it might be sick, or you find one in the day and you're sort of not sure, you can contact the British Hedgehog Preservation Society and they can just walk you through a bit of advice and hopefully put you in touch with a local rehabilitator. Obviously, there's hundreds of hedgehog carers up and down the country that are doing fantastic work. So they'll put you in touch with someone who can help that hog. And of course, Hedgehog Street, so we do a lot of different work. It's an extremely varied project, which is fantastic. It makes my job really good fun. So we do a lot of work engaging with stakeholders and land managers. And in this case, what we mean by stakeholders is people like developers, ecologists, farmers, people like that. So engaging with all different types of groups. And what we're trying to do is raise awareness of hedgehogs and how people can help improve habitat in different areas. As part of that, we run a hedgehog ecology course that I'll talk about a little bit later on. We also liaise with our MP species champion, Chris Grayling. He helps us when it comes to parliamentary issues. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We support various research projects as well, trying to understand the hedgehog decline and also look at potential solutions. So we'll be hearing from Lauren this evening. She's one of those researchers. We also work with a lot of local projects, trying to support these lovely startup projects that are raising awareness of hedgehogs. And we also do a lot of work promoting hedgehog-friendly gardens and just raising awareness of these things that we all know people can do in the garden. It's these simple things that are going to make a really big difference for hedgehogs. So a few of those things are here. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I know a lot of these are covered in Joel's talk this evening, in Joel's video. So yeah, these are just some of the ways, and if you want any more information, you can certainly go onto hedgehogstreet.org and find a bit more information and lots of advice and tips for how to how to do these things, and just bits of advice. So yeah, lots of ways, and as you can see, you don't need a giant garden, you don't need loads of money. It's quite a lot of quite simple things that are really gonna help, which is great. And also the good thing about hedgehogs is a lot of these changes are going to help other species as well. So wildlife features, wildlife ponds, compost heaps, that's going to be so good for so many species, which is really good. So 2022, this Hedgehogs Thinking, what is Hedgehog Street doing? So a little bit of an update on all things 2022. So if you cast your minds back a couple of months, we released the State of Britain's Hedgehogs Report 2022. So that's a report that we release every few years. The last one was back in 2018. And we use data from different wildlife surveys to analyse what's happening with hedgehogs, how populations are changing over time. So we use survey data from various different wildlife surveys, including the People's Trust for Endangered Species. They run 2 mammal surveys, Living with Mammals and Mammals on Roads. Really, really good to get involved with them. If you're not already, I would certainly recommend them. And all of that data is really important because that contributes to when we come to write these reports, just to understand, what's happening with hedgehogs. So in this report, what we found is that there's increasingly apparent differences in urban versus rural areas. So in urban areas, what we've got is a picture of a stable population that's actually starting to show signs of recovery after previously declining. Which is good news. It's a glimmer of hope, but we do just need to be a bit careful with that because things aren't solved yet. There's very much still work to do just to get them back up to the numbers that they should be, that they have been historically. In rural areas, it's slightly different. So populations do sadly remain quite low, with declines of between 30 and 75% nationally since 2000. So slightly better on the urban side of things. And we do think that's thanks, at least in part, to the fantastic work of, hedgehog champions, all these fantastic people, or you fantastic people who've been making changes and helping hedgehogs. So moving forward, what we're going to be doing in urban areas is continuing the Hedgehog Street work, really trying to raise awareness and improve habitat in urban and suburban areas. And in rural areas, obviously, there's a lot of work to do. We're going to continue to support research, just trying to untangle the different reasons for the hedgehog decline and look at potential solutions as well. And we're also planning some monitoring work on rural and farmland, just to sort of see what's going on, put together some case studies as well. And we'll also continue to circulate and update our rural advice booklet, which can be found on our website. The next 2022 update from us is a new partnership, which is very new news. That's actually just been released this week. So we have partnered with Birkdale, which is one of the UK's leading fence and gate manufacturers. And they have produced a hedgehog hole product. So you can see it pictured on the right-hand side there. So the idea of this product is to retain a hedgehog hole in a gravel board, but without compromising the strength or the structure of the fence. So it's this recycled steel product that fits in and just keeps that hole open. Obviously, that's a hedgehog highway. So that's going to be promoted with their DuraPost range. And they are kindly giving 50p from every product sold to Hedgehog Street to continue our work. I don't think it's available for purchase just yet. It's primarily going to be through Birkdale and DuraPost stockists and installers. But it can be used on other non-DuraPost gravel boards and posts. So we'll add a link to the website when that's all ready, but that's something that's going to be available for purchase, which is really good. So we're really pleased about that. And that's just been announced this week. So that's a nice Hedgehog Awareness Week, bit of good news there. Coming back to our Hedgehog Ecology course. So this is a course that we run, the full name being Hedgehog Ecology and Management for Practitioners. So we call it the HEMP course for short. So that has traditionally been a full day course, and it covers a lot of different topics. It's all things hedgehog. So it's biology, ecology, behavior, disease, rehabilitation. We look at the differences in urban and rural areas, sort of the threats, how to mitigate for these. UK legislation, survey methodology. So when there's new ways to survey, we can add that in there. And then, of course, coming on to land management. So that practical advice for people as well. And that's a really well attended course. We get lots of different people. So of course, land managers, so sort of green space managers from councils come along. We also get wildlife trust, local volunteers, lots of different people. And the course has been on a little bit of a hiatus during the pandemic, but we're getting that started again this year. And we do have an in-person version. You can see Hugh down there in full flow, telling people all about hedgehogs. So there's usually a nice outdoor component to the day as well, but we're going to be running a virtual version of the course as well, which is just going to be a bit more accessible if people sort of live further away from where we're holding the in-person one. So if that's something you're interested in, do certainly drop us an email and we can send you more information and yeah, keep you up to date on when those are planned. We are this summer as well going to be running a Hedgehog Highway competition. This is a bit of an exclusive because it's not going to be announced until July. It's going to be a competition to do with hedgehog highways, and I'm going to keep it like that. I can't say too much, unfortunately, primarily because we haven't really decided what form it's going to take yet. But yeah, so we are going to be running a competition, and that's going to help to raise awareness of hedgehog highways. So keep an eye out for that one. I'm just going to keep that one a little bit mysterious for now. We will, of course, also continue our campaign work. So we are currently pushing for Schedule 5 protection for hedgehogs in the Wildlife and Countryside Act. So they're currently Schedule 6, which means that the actual animal itself is protected from harm, but not the nesting sites. Like other species, the animal and the nesting site is protected. So we want to up that Schedule 6 protection to Schedule 5, which would mean that if there was going to be any work or any development taking place, there would be a responsibility of the developer, a legal responsibility to survey the site beforehand for hedgehogs and mitigate accordingly. So that's something we're really pushing for, both through the Environment Bill, which is sort of, that's something we've been dealing with Chris Grayling, and also we're in touch with the JNCC, which is the Joint Nature Conservation Committee, because they're doing an ongoing review of protected species. So we're in touch with them. The small mammal road sign as well. So a lot of people will have heard about this, but perhaps not seen that many. So it does seem like the feedback that we're getting from yourselves is that these are quite hard to actually have installed. So it's a small mammal road warning sign, but it does of course feature a hedgehog, as you can see on the right hand side there. So we are in touch with the Department for Transport, and we're just working with them. We're in touch to try and work out a way forward so that we can actually get these signs rolled out and raise awareness of hedgehogs on the roads. We also do a lot of work supporting local groups and local hedgehog champions. So we do, as I mentioned, we've got over 100,000 hedgehog champions, which is fantastic. That's people who've signed up on the website, pledged to help hedgehogs. We reached that milestone last year during our 10th birthday, which was really nice. What we try and do is just enable and empower people to take that Hedgehog Street message and just spread the word, raise awareness, get as many people involved in helping hedgehogs as possible. So as you can see from the pictures there, people have been doing all kinds of different things. So running stalls at different community events and chatting to people, giving out leaflets. People have been doing talks. That's Dave on the right-hand side there, hedgehog champion. Yeah, talking to local councils as well. A lot of people are in touch with councils, sort of letting the councils know how they can help hedgehogs, building hedgehog houses for their neighbours. There's lots of different incredible work going on. And if you are signed up to our monthly e-newsletter, you've probably seen from those little graphics that we do love to showcase what our hedgehog champions are doing, just show what people are doing. You know, we want to sing your praises, we want to show people what you're doing so that that'll inspire people and give people tips on how they can get started and do something similar. So if you're part of a local group, or if you're a lone hedgehog champion, you're just getting started and sort of you want to let us know what you're doing, we do really love hearing from you. So do certainly get in touch. It's fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic to hear from you. And also a little insider bit of information. So in the top left-hand side there, that's 15-year-old hedgehog champion Dylan, who's fantastic. I think he's on this call now as well. So hi, Dylan, if you're there, and Lorraine, his mum. So Dylan's been doing fantastic things in his local community. He's working with his local hedgehog carer. He's been doing a sort of ambulance service for her, which is fantastic. He's been doing local talks, which is just incredible for a 15-year-old. I definitely don't think I could have done that at his age. And he's also he's made his own garden hedgehog friendly, so he's got lots of hedgehogs visiting, which is great. He's produced an award-winning film about hedgehogs. He's been really busy, and this is all alongside schoolwork as well. So and the One Show actually got word of all of Dylan's fantastic work, so they filmed with him last week. So I think that's due to air on Friday this week. So Friday's One Show, do certainly watch it. I think it might change day. These things aren't always set in stone, but do certainly, that's a bit of an insider tip. So do certainly watch the One Show on Friday and see all about what Dylan's been up to. So how to get involved? Come and join the Hedgehog Street community. I do like to say it's a community. It's lots of people sharing the same goal. You can become a hedgehog champion. You can send us pictures, stories. On the Hedgehog Street website, I always say it's a bit like Hedgehog social media. It's quite nice, just nice. There's a forum on there. You can chat and just share ideas, tell people all about the hedgehogs that are hopefully visiting your garden. We do run the big hedgehog map as part of Hedgehog Street as well, so it's really important to log any sightings on there, and that helps us to understand the distribution of hedgehogs all over the UK, and also just to get connected. So tell neighbours about Hedgehog Street, tell friends, tell family, really try and get the word out there, tell people all about hedgehog highways. We do have a Hedgehog Street top tips leaflet as well, so we can send out batches of these, and they're really nice to post through neighbours' doors to let them know what they can do. We can send batches of those out, but do just give us a little bit of notice, because it can take time. We do get quite a lot of requests, so it can take time to send those out. So just give us a bit of a heads up if you're having an event or anything like that. And then I wanted to just finally finish off my talk. I think we're already running a little bit over, so apologies for that. But yeah, so our fantastic Hedgehog Street intern, Anina, has put together this lovely Year of the Hedgehog video. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and then Anina can share her screen. Hopefully, if that's going to work okay, and then we'll come back and do a few questions. But we'll put this on our YouTube as well. So if it's not working or anything, don't worry, we'll share that afterwards. So take it away, Anina.
Hello and welcome to Hedgehog Street. Our native West European hedgehogs are one of Britain's favourite mammals, but lots of people don't get to see them as often as they'd like. Everyone knows hedgehogs hibernate in the winter, but what's their yearly life cycle like? Let's have a look at a year in the life of a hedgehog. In the spring, hedgehogs emerge from hibernation. They've been hidden away for a long time and may have lost as much as a third of their body weight, so they'll need to replenish their fat reserves. A supplementary bowl of cat or dog food and some water can really help them at this time. Females start to search for nesting sites for when they are ready to give birth. Spring also marks the start of the mating season. Courting couples sometimes spend hours doing a mating dance, with males circling the females until they are ready to mate. Mating continues into summer, and competition can be fierce. Females are pregnant for around 4 weeks, and litters usually start being born in May and June. They're usually fully weaned by 6 to 8 weeks old. The hoglets stay in the nest for 3 or 4 weeks, then leave to go on foraging trips with their mother. They learn what's good and bad to eat, but also still drink their mother's milk. By autumn, hoglets are usually independent. Sometimes females have a second late litter, so the small hoglets may need extra food from humans to gain enough weight for the winter. Autumn sees hedgehogs trying to build up their fat reserves by eating lots of food in readiness for hibernation. They also start building their hibernation nests, which are made from leaves or straw. Winter is the season of hibernation. Hedgehog hibernation usually starts around November and lasts until March, though this can change depending on various factors, including weather, temperature and location. Sometimes hedgehogs will rouse from hibernation for short periods, so it's good to have food and water available. Once the weather starts getting warmer, hedgehogs emerge, ready to start the process all over again.
Thanks so much for that, Anina. That was brilliant. We're going to be sharing that a lot this week, so I'm sure you'll see that on social media and things, because it's a lovely, just a nice roundup of what a hedgehog's doing at different times of year. So, and you might have spotted your own footage in there, because of course when we do put these lovely videos together, we use footage from Hedgehog Champions. So yeah, that's a great one. So a couple of questions have come in, so thank you to Anina for sending those through to me. So we had a question from June. When is it safe to see if any hedgehogs use the house I built for them last year? Absolutely great to hear that you've put a house in the garden. That's great. It's best to just keep a bit of an eye out from a distance. We don't want to be sort of lifting the lid, because the risk is that if you've got any pregnant females in there, or sort of in, moving forward, if there's any hoglets, they are really sort of vulnerable to disturbance. So it's best to just keep a bit of a safe distance. You can always do the twig trick, so you can place just a small twig across the entrance of the hedgehog house, and then in the morning, if that twig's been kind of knocked to the side, you know that something's used it. You can also think about getting a wildlife camera. That's a lovely way to watch the hedgehogs and any other wildlife. Nature Spy have a lot of great cameras, and they also donate to camera trapping research projects as well. So yeah, best to keep a bit of a safe distance, and we don't want to sort of be lifting the lid in case there's anything in there. But yeah, pop the twig over there. Keep an eye out for droppings as well. There might be droppings around the edge. So hedgehog, sorry, it's a bit gross, but hedgehog droppings are about the size of your thumb or your little finger, and they're sort of dark pellets. They've got bits of insects, sort of shiny bits in there, of beetles and bits that they couldn't digest. So those would be some ways to do that. Yeah, thank you for all the questions that are coming in. You can certainly email us if we can't get through all of the questions, because there has been quite a lot. A lot of questions about the road sign, I think, which can be really difficult to have installed. Like I say, we are working on that, but we did put some guidance together on how you can contact your local council, the things that you can tell them about. So where to get data on hedgehog roadkill, the research that has gone into this sign. So I think Anina's going to put that link in the chat. So yeah, we have produced some guidance that you can pass along to your local council, and we'll certainly keep we'll keep speaking to the Department for Transport and see if we can make that process any easier. It might be a good point now on the subject of roads. That's a good segue. I didn't even plan that. So I'm going to pass over to our next speaker, which is Lauren Moore. So Lauren's a PhD researcher at Nottingham Trent University. If you want to start sort of sharing your screen, Lauren. So she's completing her PTS funded research, and that's centered around road impacts for the West European hedgehog, understanding mechanisms and testing solutions. Why did the hedgehog not cross the road? Love it. So Lauren's in the third year of this really important and really interesting research, and she's got some updates to share with us. So I'll pass you over to Lauren. Do we have you, Lauren?
Hello, can you see me and hear me and see my screen?
Yes, we can indeed. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the introduction, Grace. And it's really lovely to be here and speaking to you all. So as Grace mentioned, this is my PhD project at Nottingham Trent University, and it's all about hedgehogs and roads, looking at the impacts that roads may or may not be having on hedgehog populations, and really crucially, what we can do about these, a potential mitigation solution. So tonight I'll be sharing just an overview of the data and the results I've been collecting over the past 2 years. So it is said that roads are one of the largest human artifacts on the planet, and decades of road ecology research has revealed an immense impact that these roads have on wildlife, almost every living organism in the vicinity of roads. But why focus on hedgehogs when so many other animals are affected by roads every single year in the UK? Well, hedgehogs are one of the most common roadkill sightings in the UK. And it's said that up to 335,000 hedgehogs are killed on UK roads every single year. As well as that, roads can change the habitat quality around them, whether that's from the light or the noise or the vibrations from vehicles, meaning that animals change their movements and their behaviour around roads in a way that could fragment their populations. As well as this, roads come with lots of physical barriers, so that's central medians, that's parallel rivers or drainage ditches. And these can be barriers to wildlife, and particularly ground-dwelling animals such as hedgehogs, and stop them crossing the road and stop them finding all these wonderful resources like food and mates and water, again fragmenting these populations. Perhaps above all is that hedgehogs, of course, have shown really rapid and ongoing declines over recent decades, and roads are considered to be an important driver of this decline. However, we currently lack the evidence to confirm or refute this assumption. The evidence and the data we have at the moment isn't fine scale enough to really understand how roads are affecting hedgehogs' daily and yearly movements and behaviour, and therefore we don't understand if roads might be affecting their persistence in the long term. This means then that we currently lack this knowledge of what is effective road mitigation. We don't know whether it is required, we don't know if it is what is best for this mitigation, and really importantly, what is most cost effective. This means then that the same 335,000 hedgehogs are killed year on year on our roads in this country. So what are we doing about this? Well, our project is a 4-year-long project, very kindly supported by the People's Trust for Endangered Species. And we have 11 sites around the UK where we are studying roads and hedgehogs. We're doing this for 3 specific objectives. One, we're looking specifically at road mortality and whether this is affecting the viability of populations in the way that is driving this decline. We also want to be looking at whether roads are fragmenting these populations. So we've been studying hedgehog movements around roads and their behaviour around different road networks. And then we also want to be looking at what we can do about this and whether road tunnels are effective at both reducing road mortality and improving this landscape connectivity for these populations. And this is nicely summed up as the problems and the solutions for hedgehogs and roads. And we have lots of overall aims of this project. So we really want to be understanding which of these threats against hedgehogs are really driving their decline and these relative importance of all these threats to make sure that all of these wonderful efforts that, for example, Hedgehog Street are putting in, all of these resources and the time are tailored towards what's going to be most effective for their conservation. And we also want to make sure that all these future roads that are planning to be built are as sustainable as possible, both for hedgehogs and a whole host of other wildlife. And that's really important because roads in the UK are expected to increase in length by 51% by 2050. So we really need to make sure everything that we're doing is wildlife and hedgehog friendly. So firstly, thinking specifically about hedgehog road mortality. So I have 4 study sites here in Nottinghamshire where I have been studying their populations. I've been going out in the wee hours of the morning and becoming a bit nocturnal myself to monitor the population sizes and structures. Every hedgehog I find, I understand its sex and its age and its weight, and it gives me an idea of population structure and health. At the same time, I've been finding all of the roadkill I can within these populations. And I've racked up over 18,000 kilometres doing these roadkill surveys. So it's quite a lot of kilometres, but we've to have such a fantastic data set to really dig deep and understand what's happening in these populations. So on the screen there, that map is showing my 4 different populations, and we can see the roadkill represented by each of those dots as well. So I've got 2 urban populations and 2 rural populations. Populations 1 and 2 are the urban populations, and we can see that relative to the other 2, there's quite a lot of roadkill within these populations. And when we combine this roadkill data with the population data, we have a really fascinating picture that's drawn up. So for these urban populations, there is a large amount of roadkill, but actually these populations are much larger, they're much healthier. So actually the relative importance of this roadkill is quite low. These urban populations often have higher survival rates, and actually the number of hoglets born in each of these 2 urban populations was more than the number of hedgehogs that were killed on roads every single year. So they can easily sustain this level of mortality. However, if we look at these rural populations, it does show a slightly different picture. So these rural populations did have fewer individuals killed on roads every year. However, because these populations are much smaller, the roadkill actually took away quite a large chunk of these populations every single year. So the relative importance of roadkill to these smaller rural populations was much higher. And that's really important to consider alongside the fact that there were much fewer hoglets being born in these populations, so that they couldn't easily replace those lost on roads every single year. So perhaps these urban populations might be able to sustain this road mortality and continue into the future. But these rural populations might need to have migration from the surrounding populations, and therefore landscape scale connectivity is going to be really important to sustain these populations going forward. So now thinking about how roads might be fragmenting these populations and looking at hedgehog movements around different road networks. So alongside those population surveys, we've also been collecting really fine scale, fascinating movement data for these 4 hedgehog populations. And when we animate this GPS data and their movement data, we get a video such as this on the screen. So this is one of my study sites in Nottinghamshire, and it's a village only made up of quite quiet, minor and local roads. So the type of roads that you see outside your doorstep. There's no busy motorways or A roads at all. So these 5 hedgehogs here, we can see that they're crossing the roads fairly freely. They don't seem to be coming across any barriers in their path. We found that the males actually cross the roads almost twice as frequently as the females. And that's particularly clear when you look at the male in pink, who is doing all of these extraordinary journeys just in a single night. And this does match up with the roadkill as well. We did find that most of the roadkill was male. We can then compare these movements to different road types, different road networks. So on the left hand side there, that map is showing another urban town. And we can see a B road running through. So that B road in purple is slightly busier than the roads on our doorsteps, but not as busy as A roads and motorways. So for the hedgehog in blue there, that male seems to be crossing that B road quite freely. He doesn't seem to be put off by the higher traffic volume and road width for that road. Compare that to the other 3 females there in the map, and they seem a bit more hesitant to cross that road. And we can see an even more extreme example of this on the map on the right-hand side. This is one of the more rural populations here, and there's a really busy A road outlined in black running through this village. And having walked along this road at night looking for the hedgehogs, it's really loud. There's lots of trucks going past, even the wee hours of the night. So it's really quite different from the roads on our doorsteps, for example. There's 2 hedgehogs there shown in the map, and these are the only 2 hedgehogs I found anywhere remotely close to this road. The rest were really quite far south in the village. And we can see there that these hedgehogs are very rarely crossing that road, only a handful of times. So perhaps roads are not absolute barriers to hedgehogs and their movements, But it does seem that with more traffic volume and perhaps road width as well, hedgehogs do become a bit more hesitant to cross these roads. Now, so far I have only shown you maps and hedgehog movements in relation to roads where there's no physical barrier, there's no central median stopping the hedgehogs crossing. But of course, that's only one part of the road network here in the UK. And this map shows one of my study sites in Staffordshire. And actually, it's showing two of the different types of fragmentation. So on the right is an A road. And again, to the previous map, there's no physical barriers, but we can see that these hedgehogs are very rarely crossing that road. What's really interesting actually is to see that that male in blue does use the road verges to move northward, which perhaps might show why hedgehogs are so vulnerable to being killed on roads, because they're attracted to that lovely scrub, providing cover for them, both for nesting and for moving throughout the landscape as well. But we can also see on this map that no hedgehogs shown on the map cross the busy motorway on the ground. And that could be because of the noise and the vibrations from the road. Also could be because there was this central median along this motorway, showing that even if the hedgehogs wanted to cross the road on the ground, they just couldn't get by. But I did choose my words very carefully there. I said that no hedgehog crossed the motorway on the ground. And you'll see there that that male in blue did in fact get to the other side of the road, but he did so using this footbridge. He crossed over that footbridge, stayed there for less than 2 hours and crossed right back across. So that's probably one of my favourite discoveries from this project so far. And perhaps it goes to show that if hedgehogs really do want to cross the road, they will find a way. They're pretty determined. And that nicely segues into what we can do about helping hedgehogs cross the road in a safe manner. So road tunnels are there for allowing these animals, hedgehogs or badgers or newts, to cross the road safely and away from the risk of vehicles, both reducing mortality and increasing this habitat connectivity. But they are really expensive, so we do need to make sure that these costs are justified and making sure that these tunnels are effective as possible. So we've been looking at whether these tunnels are effective for hedgehogs in particular, and we've done this at several different sites around the UK, shown on the map on the left-hand side. And we have monitored tunnels of 5 different types and 20 tunnels in particular. And those pictures on the map just show some of the few we've been monitoring. So we've got rectangular tunnels, circular pipes, and dome tunnels that are so large you could drive your car through. So a really fascinating variety of tunnels to see if hedgehogs are using them. And the good news is that hedgehogs did use the tunnels, which is really wonderful to see. So 3 out of 7 populations use the tunnels. But what's even better is that both males and females use the tunnels, which is really excellent from a population connectivity perspective, meaning they can all meet up, access the resources, and produce the next generation of hedgehogs as well. We found that some hedgehogs repeatedly used these tunnels within the 3 weeks that they were monitored. And what's even better is that we found that around a quarter of each of these populations were using the tunnels. So it wasn't all of the hedgehogs, but that is a sufficient number for this population mixing and finding each other throughout the night. But what we want to know now is how we can increase the number of hedgehogs using these tunnels. And in fact, we found that when hedgehogs did use these tunnels, they exclusively used these 1/2 metre by 1/2 metre tunnels, shown on the bottom of the screen there. That is despite the wide variety of tunnels that we were monitoring and that they were in close proximity to. Perhaps that's because these smaller tunnels are placed under narrower roads. Perhaps that's because these are more closer to urban areas where there's higher hedgehog densities. This is a great starting point for any future roads that might be built. However, if we really want to be looking at whether these road tunnels are reducing these risky road crossings, we need to be understanding and comparing road crossing frequencies to this tunnel use. This is just one site in Glasgow where we still found that hedgehogs were crossing the road on average 7 times per night, which is much higher than the average tunnel use, which was up to 0.6 tunnel passes per night. And this movement data again can start to show us why this might be. So for example, those movements highlighted in yellow and purple show that when these hedgehogs are coming towards the tunnel and the fence, rather than being guided towards the tunnel, actually they might find the end of the tunnel, actually they might just turn back around entirely. So although we have lots of hedgehogs using these tunnels, perhaps they're not as effective as they are for other target species, and some alternatives must be investigated, whether that's speed bumps to reduce driver speed or fantastic hedgehog road signs. So that's certainly options for future research as well. I'd just like to say a huge thank you to the wide variety of collaborators, particularly the People's Trust for Endangered Species, and all my wonderful army of volunteers on the ground as well. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks so much for that, Lauren. That was so interesting. Yeah, thank you very much for that talk. That was fantastic. I love the idea of the hedgehog that went over the footbridge. I remember you telling me about that. I just think it's the coolest thing. Yeah, it's
my favourite hedgehog by far.
Yeah, it's just fab. So question that we got a little bit earlier for you. So Karen was saying that she's trying to get Warwickshire County Council to adopt a 20s plenty policy in villages and towns. So that might, obviously that's going to reduce sort of noise and things like that in villages, but could that potentially help hedgehogs as well? Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yes, I absolutely think so. So what's really interesting about the hedgehog roadkill, the locations of these roadkill, is that often, not always, but often it's in the surrounding areas going into the village. So it's in this transition zone between these 50 or 60 miles an hour rural roads into this 30 miles per hour villages. So it does seem to be these cars which are coming into the villages a bit too quickly, and perhaps they're coming into areas where hedgehogs are active, but these cars aren't slowing down enough to spot the hedgehogs or give hedgehogs enough time to react. So this slower speeds, I think, could really show some potential in both helping driver awareness and hedgehog reactions as well.
Brill, thank you. Another question, how are the animals encouraged to use the tunnels?
Really good question. So far these the tunnels that are out there, they're not specifically built for hedgehogs. More often than not, they're built for newts. The one way that works for any species, regardless of who it's built for, is that there's fencing running parallel to the road, and it goes quite a distance, so any animal that might come against this fencing is then guided towards the tunnel itself. We have seen in that last map that it doesn't always work, and perhaps they need some sort of other incentive. There's lots of research that needs to be done into that. Something really interesting as well is that badger odour can sometimes deter hedgehogs from using the tunnels. So again, there's lots of different factors that really need to be picked apart into why hedgehogs might use them and why they might not use them.
Well, lovely. Thanks so much for that. That was a really interesting talk. Always love hearing about your project. It's so interesting. So yeah, thanks so much, Lauren. Thank you for joining us this evening.
My pleasure.
So next up, we're going to hopefully be chatting to David Murcott. If you're there, David, if you could unmute and camera off so we can see you and we can chat to you all about your lovely hedgehog group.
Have you got me, Grace?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you there. So I'll just share a quick slide just showing all of the things that your group's been doing. Bear with me. Okay. So we've got David here. Thanks so much for joining us, David. So David's a co-founder of the Whittington and Fisherwick Environment Group. So they're based in Staffordshire. And the group's been running for many years, and they've got a lot of wide-ranging projects. They've been up to all sorts, from trying to improve their carbon footprint all the way through to helping pollinators. And most recently, that's included a hedgehog highway project. So yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about your group, David, and just how you got started?
Yes, thank you. It's a real privilege to be invited this evening, so I'm really grateful that I have been allowed to speak. In 2005, a disused quarry became economically viable, and the quarry company wanted to remove all the nature that had adopted it, such as trees, shrubs, birds, etc., etc. And a small group of us decided we'd approach the company and ask them to compromise with what their plans were, so they could carry on doing their business, but nature could have its chance and still thrive there. Fortunately, that was really successful. And we discovered a small group of strangers that we shared a lot of interests in biodiversity, sustainability, concerns about climate. And we wanted to start a group. So in 2007, we started a Whittington and Fishwick Environment Group. And it's been running very strongly since then. Initially, it was based on local media and newspapers, and now it's very much a social media platform with its own website and its own Facebook pages.
That sounds brilliant. So you mentioned there you've got your Facebook page. Would you recommend that for other groups? Is that quite a good way to sort of
Absolutely.
link in and chat to each other?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Yeah. So what then inspired you to move on to hedgehogs? What kind of got you started on the Hedgehog Highway project?
Well,
can you tell us a little bit about that and just kind of how that's all running?
Yeah, well, we were looking at all sorts of things, as you alluded to. We initially looked at reducing people's carbon footprint, but then the parish council was offered some land, and we were invited to put a proposal together, and we wanted to create a community orchard, and that went ahead, and that's proven to be successful. And within that, we created a wildlife meadow, and we provided a very thick boundary hedge with lots of native hedging. And that sort of led on to looking at a project that we then started called the River of Flowers, where we emphasised the need to put wildflowers and native hedgerows in for the benefits of pollinators. And of course, that leads on to looking at what other benefits we've got for other creatures, such as bats and obviously such as hedgehogs. So we looked at the project in Kirtlington in Oxfordshire, where they were creating hedgehog highways. And obviously we then were aware of Hedgehog Street and your involvement in that project. And we looked at all the other things that Hedgehog Street was introducing to everybody, and we wanted to be part of that. So I asked to lead the project. I joined Hedgehog Street, and then we started progressing through the website that we've got, knowledge around hedgehogs within the local parish. And it took off because, as you know, Grace, and as everybody listening to this will know, people are very interested in the welfare of hedgehogs and they want to get involved. They often don't know how to get involved, but they're very keen to join if there is a group that will take them on. And that's what we discovered. Very short space of time, we've got 100 families engaged, and we're in a village of about 2,000 families, but very quickly got 100 families involved. We've got hedgehog highways crossing the whole village, the whole parish. And we engaged with the school, which we'd already got relations with the Girl Guides, with the Scouts, with various village community groups and the church. And so together we sort of used all our contacts, and it's grown from strength to strength. And we're working very closely with a hedgehog rescue lady who lives about 7 miles away from us. So all the advice we need, all the specialist advice she provides, and we're willing volunteers to enable hedgehogs to thrive.
It sounds fantastic. It's a really, really good project, isn't it? And I think it's really good that you've linked in with the local school, you know, the Girl Guides, all these things, because it's, you know, it's great to have a group, but that's got to feed into the rest of the community, hasn't it? It's so important to try and
Absolutely.
reach out to different groups. Did you find when you started that actually you were surprised by how many people were keen to get involved? You said there's so many families that have put in hedgehog highways. Were you surprised by kind of how many people were keen to sort of get into it?
We were probably surprised at the speed, but to be perfectly honest, over the years that we've been running these projects, the enthusiasm of people to help nature, to help with biodiversity, to help with sustainability, to look after verges, because we've got lots of verges planted with wildflowers, meadows have been planted. So it wasn't a surprise that people wanted to get involved. I think it was a surprise at the speed they got involved. You know, people were very willing to put gaps in their fences, to create holes in hedgerows, to welcome hedgehogs in. And then not only do that, I created a simple design for a hedgehog feeding box, and we've we've now got 100 of those dotted around various places, and 28 of those were built by the Girl Guides.
That's fantastic. Yeah, get those local groups sort of, you know, getting their hands dirty and sort of doing all those things. It's fantastic.
Definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, and I think because we've been in touch, we sort of were in touch with each other last year, weren't we? Just sort of chatting about your project, and I think I really like the sound of, it's a bit like Kirtlington. It's got this hedgehog project, but it's within the context of a wider kind of environment group. And so you're doing kind of other things for other species, and actually all of these things that you're talking about with native hedgerows, with wildflowers, all of those things, you know, are good for pollinators and good for other species, but they're also going to benefit hedgehogs. So do you think that's quite important in a group to you know, to look at the wider picture and kind of how it all links together?
Completely. I mean, what the hedgehogs eat, they eat insects, you know, beetles, worms, slugs, snails, lots of other creatures. Well, if you haven't got an environment that enables those to thrive, you're not going to have an environment that enables hedgehogs to thrive. So everything's linked. We've run a number of what we initially called big green fairs to get people involved, to tell them what we were doing, and that led on to open gardens events. And within those events, we always have the theme of biodiversity, sustainability, and we educate. That's a little bit arrogant perhaps, but we educate people into how they can create environments in their garden, what plants they can grow, what they can do to encourage not just hedgehogs, but pollinating insects, small mammals, small birds, and it's all connected, isn't it? As we all know, we've learnt to realise everything is connected with everything else.
Definitely, yeah, and I think gardens can be nice little sort of micro habitats, can't they?
Yeah.
So I love this idea of open gardens. I think that's such a nice idea to kind of not just tell people what to do, but kind of show your neighbours, you know, this is what I've done. Is that something you'd recommend to other groups, the idea of open gardens?
Very much so. I mean, we've discussed it before, Grace, haven't we? We discovered, which is a revelation to me, I asked to lead that project as well, and we were very nervous about how many people would be attracted to our area, which is a relatively small village. But we realised that there are a community of people who spend their summers moving from open gardens events throughout the season. And these are not small numbers, these are large numbers of people. And they're very interested to see how people are planting their gardens, what they're putting into their gardens. So we, on top of that, we're very lucky we've got some people with some beautiful gardens, but we attach to that a theme. You know, so we're not looking at the biggest garden, we're looking at how we can encourage nature into the smallest garden, you know, and how anybody can participate for the benefit of hedgehogs, for the benefit of bats, benefit of pollinating insects, etc., etc. So it's just about introducing people to what they can achieve. And once they see it happening in people's gardens, they go home and they replicate it.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to flag that as well, because I do speak to people about hedgehogs and they're a bit like, oh, well, no, my garden's too small. And it's a bit like, no, they have to travel through so many gardens. So it's, no matter how small your garden is, there's still things that you can do. So it's so important, isn't it?
Yeah. One of the issues, one of the references on your website that was a real shocker to everybody, I think you've got to mention that each hedgehog covers an area equivalent to 30 football pitches. Now, that's about the size of our village. So, you know, we've got people with wildlife cameras, they've seen a hedgehog, they've assumed that little hedgehog would stay local and would cover in the nearby gardens. But when you explain that little hedgehog was probably covering the whole village and he's doing 1.5 miles a night, either to find food or possibly a mate, and just to test people's environments, test their gardens, can they get in, can they get through? You know, previous speaker talks about the dangers of crossing roads. Well, if you can create a highway that avoids roads, then that's got to be a win-win, hasn't it?
Yeah, true. Just kind of steer them away from the roads. Yeah, and I think, yeah, like you were saying, in terms of the area that they cover, again, that links back to Lauren's talk, because she's got that lovely it's sort of moving graphic of the hedgehogs. Yeah, the ones that she's radio tagged, and I think that can surprise people as well, definitely. Is there one thing that you would recommend to other groups? Is there any sort of key piece of advice that you did and you thought actually that worked really well? Is there any sort of what's your kind of What's your
I mean,
gem?
if you get yourself together and you can allocate roles initially, if you have a lead of a project, that's quite helpful. But everybody's got to be pulling for that project. But also, there are pots of money out there. You can't do a great deal without funding, but there are people willing to give community groups money for the benefit of hedgehogs or anything else that you're focusing on. And that was an education to me. We've got somebody in the group who's, well, an expert at finding pots of money, but they're not difficult to find. You know, there's various companies and organisations who want communities to thrive and these sort of volunteer groups to thrive. So it's out there. If you can get that together and harness it and then use it for the benefit of the local community, you'll find that other people will give you more money, then you can do more and more things. So yes, yeah. you need to have an identified group. You need to identify roles within the group. And if you can get the enthusiasm and the lead on projects, you know, I do hedgehogs, another lady does bats, another lady is looking at frogs and amphibians. So, you know, we're looking at different things, but when we need to pull together, then we do that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that's really good advice, just to kind of don't sort of take it all on yourself. It's good to just assign roles and just have different people helping you, because I think if you do set up a group or something like that, I think that people would always be surprised at how other people do want to get involved. I think everyone's got this sort of dormant
really do,
love for nature. You know, it's so important, and a lot of people have realised that during lockdown as well. So I think people would. And
people are also worried. People are also worried they don't know enough. But that's the point of groups, and that's the benefit of social media. The little bits of knowledge can be all brought together, and it creates a lot of knowledge.
Absolutely, I think that's absolutely true. I'm just having a quick look at the questions we've got from the chat. So Andrea's asking, how did you engage with people to join the highway scheme? How did you sort of get the word out there?
With the highways, it was just social media, and it works extremely well. And we've got our own, which is in Fisherwick Environment Group. That's on Facebook, and that is followed by a lot of people. But we wanted to go wider than that to people who may not think they're interested in the group that we're part of. So we created another group, or one that was already in existence, that was just looking at what was happening in the area, and we then attached our I mean, I don't do Facebook, but other people do it for me. But so that information was on Facebook, and it went to a really wide audience. And of course, you get a great response from that. You know, people want to get involved. And the other groups that I've mentioned, the guides, the scouts, the church, people within those groups are also looking at Facebook and other social media.
Absolutely. I think the power of social media is not to be sort of undermined. I think that's such a good way to get your message out. And even if someone's not on Facebook, the odds are someone in their family or one of their friends will be. So it is a fantastic way to get the word out. Let's have a quick look at any other questions. How did you get people to make the step from thinking about joining to actually joining? That's quite a good one, because I think in theory, a lot of people are a bit like, oh, I love wildlife, I want to get involved. But then it's just taking that next step. Do you have any sort of tips for that?
I think you've got to accept that any group, whatever the interest is, will almost inevitably be a relatively small group. But there is a much bigger audience that is interested in what you're doing, but a little bit nervous about joining the group. So what we've done, we've had regular workshops and work meetings. I graft fruit trees because of this community orchard we've got. So I would run a tree grafting workshop, and people would come along to that. The lady doing the bat project, she had a bat walk initiative, and people came along to that. We'd love them to join the group, but there's a lot of people who've got busy lives, lots of other things on the go, but they want to contribute. So if you enable them to contribute, and the Hedgehog Project is a classic case, we have 100 families who are really interested, and lots of those family members are communicating on Facebook on a regular basis. You know, the beauty of the camera is once you've got a film of a hedgehog in your garden, everybody wants to see it. And then more and more people want to do the same thing, but they don't necessarily have to become part of the group. It'd be great if they did, but people are a little bit reluctant because of the time commitment, or what they think is the time commitment.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Lovely. I think we'll leave it there. Thanks so much, David, for sort of sharing all of this stuff that you've been doing. It really is a fantastic project, and it's been lovely to sort of be in touch with you.
It's a privilege to be invited on.
Yeah.
With 100,000 hedgehog champions, I feel very fortunate to have a chance to tell you what we're doing.
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much, Dave. That's very nice of you to say. And yeah, just to sort of anybody else in the call, you know, if you're part of a group, you know, we're in touch with a lot of groups, but do get in touch, because there's ways that we can support you. You know, you can exchange ideas between different groups to see what other people have been doing. So there really is a community of people out there. There's a lot of different hedgehog groups all up and down the UK doing lots of different things. So it's, yeah, there's really a lot of information to be shared, which is fantastic. So yeah, thanks so much, David.
Right,
thank
pleasure.
you.
I'm going to be listening with attention to the rest of the meeting.
Oh, good, fantastic. Okay, so next up, we do have a video from Joel Ashton. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and Anina's got the video of Joel. So Joel's a wildlife gardener, and he's been doing that for many years, and he's extremely experienced. He does sort of small gardens. He does a lot of landscape and habitat creation in small gardens, all the way up to sort of larger patches of land. So Joel's put a video together for us. So we've tested this, and we're hoping it's going to work. It's about 10 minutes long, and he's taken us through some tips, but we will be putting this on our Hedgehog Street YouTube channel as well. So if there's any problems, then you can watch this one later, but hopefully this should be okay. So I'll mute myself, and then obviously we can't ask Joel any questions, unfortunately, but we can move on to the next speaker afterwards. So yeah, if you could play that, Anina, thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Joel Ashton, and I'm a wildlife garden designer and installer, and I've been doing this for the last 17 plus years, and I'm very privileged, I feel, to have been asked by Hedgehog Street to make this video for you about all the ways in which you can help wildlife in your own garden, and in particular, of course, the whole reason we are here, our wonderful little mammals, the hedgehogs. So hopefully in this video I'll be able to give you a few top tips as to how you can help our little hogs, and obviously a big shout out to Hedgehog Street. It's a wonderful partnership obviously between the PTES and the Hedgehog Society, so a great joint venture to obviously help raise awareness of our wonderful, sadly declining mammals that we love so much throughout the UK. So in this video, as I say, I'm going to be giving you a few tips and ideas as to how you can help hedgehogs, and of course other wildlife as well. I think by doing or installing some of the practices that I'm about to talk to you about, and by practicing some of them in turn, you are therefore going to create an entire ecosystem in your back garden that will not only support hedgehogs but many other walks of life. So without further ado, let's look at the first way you can help. So my first piece of advice to you is to make access for your hedgehogs. Now, I know this might sound ridiculously obvious, but of course if we have fences that go tight to our ground levels, and we have concrete gravel boards, for example, underneath that, as is the way of many fences these days, then of course our hedgehogs are gradually losing the areas that they can access to feed and obviously survive and nest, of course. So by making access for them, you are enabling them to enter your garden and of course access a lot more food. Now hedgehogs can travel up to 1 mile a night, so they need a lot of gardens to access for food and just to sustain their lifestyle basically. So the more you can give them access to your garden and others, the better. So if you've got 3 adjoining neighbours, for example, one on the right, one behind you, one to your left, then speak to your neighbours and see if you can create a hedgehog highway, which is of course a great way to let these animals access the various gardens that are in your neighbourhood. Now to do this, you're going to need a hole about 13 centimetres by 13 centimetres, or about just over 5 inches in old money. And of course, if you want to see the full extent of how you can achieve this, then do check out my YouTube channel, Wild Your Garden with Joel Ashton. I have got a full instructional video on the channel as to how you can make one of these in your own fence, gravel board or whatever. So yes, that's the first thing you can do, is make access. And of course, if you are thinking of replacing a fence, these panels are fairly recent, but of course if you have got an existing fence that is a bit dilapidated, then please consider putting in a new hedge, a new native hedge, because not only will this allow more access for hedgehogs to come in and out of the garden. Obviously it's a bit difficult if you've got dogs, but you can still put a little bit of stock mesh up or something just to keep them out while the hedge is establishing. But of course, by doing this, you're not only allowing access for those hedgehogs, but you're also creating a very nice corridor for them to rummage along for food. Of course, the underneath of a hedge is an ideal corridor for them to move from garden to garden, and of course provide a lot of leaf litter and therefore food in amongst those leaves when they drop. So native hedgerows, if you can, get some planted in your garden. They're absolutely wonderful, but first and foremost, make sure they can enter your garden. So now that the hedgehogs have found your wonderful new garden, they will of course be looking for something to eat and obviously a drink to go with it. So the best thing you can do, particularly in the summer months, is provide them with a fresh supply of water on a daily basis, because with the loss of over 1 million ponds throughout our countryside over the last century, we have lost an alarming amount of habitat and open water for these mammals to drink from. So of course when it gets to the summertime, they might be struggling for something to drink. So the best thing you can do, get yourself an old plant pot. I'm pretty sure we can all run to one of these, or an old tray. This is a tray from a plant pot obviously, and just get, you don't have to use a watering can like this obviously, simply fill it up. And not only the hedgehogs, but of course the birds will, I'm sure, appreciate it as well. Like an episode of Blue Peter this. Yes, so the best thing you can do is something as simple as that. Obviously not too deep, because you don't want them climbing over the edge and falling in, and then of course getting stuck and not being able to get out. So a nice shallow plant tray. Make sure you keep it, or an old dish or bowl from the kitchen of course, but make sure you keep it clean just to make sure they've got a fresh supply of water. So fresh water, that's certainly a good thing you can do. Now, as garden lovers in the UK, we are of course obsessed with cleanliness and keeping our herbaceous borders absolutely blooming as long as possible. And one of the ways in which we do this is of course to remove slugs and snails from our borders. Well, I personally don't, but I know a lot of traditional gardeners probably will. And I'm afraid to say that the use of slug pellets to prevent these animals from accessing our borders and enjoying the nice plants we put on display for them means that unfortunately by the mollusks, the snails and the slugs consuming these slug pellets, they can of course have a very adverse effect and lead to the death of many hedgehogs around the country. So the next tip for you is, please, if you are doing so, please stop from using any form of slug pellets in your garden, because they really can have an adverse effect. And it's not only that, it's if the slugs and snails eat them, of course it's one of the main reasons, well certainly a very big contribution as to why things such as our song thrushes have declined as well, because it moves up the food chain. So even though it's a snail or slug that's eaten that pellet, once the birds or the hedgehogs come to eat those slugs and snails once they've died, it can then of course have an adverse effect later on. And then even further up the food chain, things such as sparrowhawks of course, which will frequent our gardens and take songbirds of course from our feeders. And of course if there's a nice plump song thrush on the lawn, they're not going to say no to it. So please stop using pellets in your garden if you're not doing so already. And of course if you know people that are, please pass on this message to them also. So when these hedgehogs access your garden, now that they can, they of course will want something to eat. So the best thing to do is provide them with a natural source of food that they would find in the wider countryside. Now hedgehogs are particularly omnivorous, they will eat almost anything, but of course they will like to eat a lot of insects, which is the majority of their diet, insects and worms. And part of that obviously is created from having herbaceous borders, from having detritus in our garden, things like leaf piles, log piles and that sort of thing. So by having these habitats, you're going to encourage things such as our centipedes, millipedes, woodlice, spiders, all sorts of creatures, caterpillars that are going to exist within your garden because of this habitat you've created. So by providing the insects with the habitat that they need, they'll move into the garden, and of course there'll be more food to sustain the hedgehogs. They will of course eat slugs and snails as well, which is what we would perceive to be their main diet, but actually it is more along the kind of invertebrate lines, so more insects and a lot of worms as well. So having a bit of mown lawn as well is good, because quite often if you've ever been outside in the evening with a torch and crept very quietly onto your lawn, you can often see worms coming out of holes and mating, and of course a lot of worms will come out of the burrows at night, and that is of course an opportune time for the hedgehogs to find this wonderful tasty treat. So having some mown lawn, having some herbaceous borders to attract insects, to attract the earthworms to come up to the surface, is of course a very good way of providing a natural food source for our hedgehogs. So we've already looked at the importance of not using pellets in your garden, slug pellets in particular, and the obvious reasons for not doing that. And we've also looked at the importance of lawns for providing a habitat for worms to mate on and also come out of, and therefore provide food for our hedgehogs. But I'd like to talk to you now for a second about the importance of not using herbicides. Now, for some reason, for whatever that may be, I cannot quite fathom, we are obsessed with eradicating every other species of plant in our lawns. It seems not all of us, again, I'm not generalizing, but a lot of us seem to be obsessed with spraying our lawns and making them basically free of wildflowers. And this lawn behind me here is currently full, it's difficult to see, but it's currently full of daisies, hoary plantain, bird's foot trefoil, red clover, self-heal, many species of wildflower that have occurred naturally over the years. And because it's never been treated with any herbicides, it has of course meant that it can create a wonderful little micro habitat in itself. And by leaving the grass to grow, even if you just raise your mower height to 2 or 3 inches, that will enable all of these wildflowers to flower, which is therefore providing lots more nectar and pollen for many insects, and of course larval food plants for a lot of other moths, butterflies and everything else, and in turn more food for the hedgehogs. So by simply not mowing your lawn as often or cutting it as low as you usually do by lifting the height, and by not using herbicides on your lawn, you can in fact make a really big difference in terms of the habitat in your own garden by not doing anything at all. So it really is as simple as not mowing and not using herbicides. So when it gets to autumn time and hedgehogs think about going into hibernation, there are a couple of things you can consider doing to help them. One is of course providing a lot of nesting material for them, and this is of course usually deciduous leaves which they like to line their hibernaculums with. So leaves from things such as native trees like silver birch and just native foliage in general, but of course deciduous foliage is more important than evergreen foliage. So things like holly and laurel, things like that, of course is not going to be as comfortable for them. So by having deciduous trees and shrubs in your garden, it is obviously providing a good source of bedding material for them, and we'll have a look at the other way in which you can help them now. So once you've supplied your hedgehogs with everything they need to make their hibernaculum for the winter, of course they need somewhere to do it, and by providing more branches and sticks and twigs and logs and making piles of them in your garden in some nice sheltered spots in the corner of the garden, and things like ivy obviously make a really good habitat for them, especially if there's kind of logs covered over it. If the logs are covered over with the ivy, then of course it makes a really good habitat for the hedgehogs to get inside and stay warm through the winter months. So my main message for this point is not to be too tidy. Leave piles of brash around your garden, leave log stacks and make some specific ones for them, nice decent sized stacks that they can get inside of and keep warm through the winter months. Well, I hope this video has given you some hints and tips as to how you can help wildlife, and in particular our wonderful little hedgehogs in your own garden. And please, as a final message, do continue to support Hedgehog Street in their wonderful cause of raising conservation awareness about our wonderful little hedgehogs and how you can help them. So please spread this message as far and wide as possible. They really do need all the help they can get these days. And thank you very much for watching. I do hope this has inspired you to go and do your bit for wildlife in your own garden. Thanks very much.
Hello and welcome.
So I hope everybody enjoyed that. That was so that was Joel Ashton talking about the ways that we can help hedgehogs in gardens. And that particular garden looked really nice. That was a very nice garden. But yeah, so I hope the connection was okay there for everybody. I think there might be a little bit of a lag, but we'll put that on our YouTube channel. So if you'd like to watch that back or share that, we'll make that available for you. And Joel's Wild Your Garden YouTube channel is really good as well. That's got loads of really specific sort of information videos for how to set up different areas of the garden, different wildlife features that you might want to put in. So I would certainly recommend that. So next up on our list of speakers, we've got Joe Wilkinson. So Joe looks after the Hedgehog Friendly Campus project, which is funded by the British Hedgehog Preservation Society. And they're working with universities and colleges. And as the name suggests, they are making campuses hedgehog friendly. And they're also raising awareness with staff and students. And they also now work with primary schools as well. So I won't say too much. I'll pass over to Joe. But yeah, I'll hand over to you, Joe. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Grace. Thanks for inviting me along tonight as well. It's really exciting to be here, and happy Hedgehog Week, everybody. Hedgehog Friendly Campus is my favourite thing in the whole wide world. If you want to give us a follow, just really quickly, it's at Hog Friendly on social media, just so that you can see what's going on in all of the campuses across the UK. We are, as Grace mentioned, funded by the British Hedgehog Preservation Society, who are just a fantastic charity that have really done an awful lot to support the programme. And Hugh as well, who's here to speak to you a little later. A big thanks to them. You can get in touch with us on social at Hog Friendly. We also have an email address, info@hedgehogfriendlycampus.co.uk, if you have any questions after this session. So I am in love with hedgehogs. I really am. I always have been. It's a bit of a family obsession, actually. It's a bit of a, yeah, it must be a genetic thing. This is a photograph from a couple of summers ago. My dad, just in the background of the photo there, I have really strong memories of being a kid and my dad kind of veering off to the side of the road to rescue a hedgehog that had sort of wandered into the road, and would often scoop it up in his jumper or in his cap. And, you know, that's it's a really strong memory of mine. And, you know, my mum used to read me hedgehog books when I was little, and the Hedgehog was our favourite, which is the one about a hedgehog that gets hit by a car, I think, or he bumps his head and you can't remember who he is, which is really sad. But yeah, so we've always loved hedgehogs. I've just taken it a little bit differently and decided that I want to do hedgehogs as a career. But yeah, we have always loved hedgehogs. And this is a photo of me from my final year of uni, where I just went hedgehog mad, actually. This was in 2017. This was my birthday, and I decided to spend my birthday at a local primary school with a load of my friends. We were part of a conservation volunteers group, and we were talking to the primary school kids there about hedgehogs, and we were doing some hedgehog crafts, and it was like the most amazing way to spend a birthday ever. Yeah, my final year of uni was great, because I decided that I was going to apply for an internship with the Suffolk Wildlife Trust, and I was really lucky that I was granted the opportunity to go and work with them. So my final couple of months of university, I was in Ipswich doing this really big scale hedgehog kind of population study with the staff there. And that just kind of took my love of hedgehogs to sort of the next level. I thought, you know, there's really something in this. I've always cared about them. My family care about them. I think everybody else should care about them. And is there more I could be doing, really? And that's a photo of me under license, I should say, just checking that hedgehog was okay. So when I finally finished university, my first job out of uni, I was working at my local university, the University of Sheffield, and I had a really lovely manager at the time that said, you can kind of do your own thing, just pick it's like a temporary job. And he said, for the last couple of months, just pick a thing that you like and go and do it. And I thought, right, this is my opportunity. So I came up with this idea in conjunction with a couple of other staff members at the university, that, you know, we'd been walking around the campus and thinking there's loads of stuff that the campus could be doing that perhaps it hasn't realised it could be doing for hedgehogs. So let's maybe turn that into a bit of a project idea. And hey presto, we turned it into this lovely little project at the time. It was just, you know, a local project. We had Hugh, who you're going to speak to later, come along, do a talk. We had other people speaking on hedgehogs and research they were doing into hedgehogs, and we did some hedgehog surveys, and we put out hedgehog houses and all sorts of stuff, and it was great. And it was so great, in fact. And, you know, we noticed how much the students and staff really responded positively to it, and how much it really got people's attention. That we saw it as a bit of a proof of concept. We thought other universities would love to get involved in this, and universities take up so much space in the UK, that if that space was harnessed and utilised for hedgehogs, that could really, really help the population to recover. So that's what we did. And we spoke to the British Hedgehog Preservation Society, who were kind enough to fund a national rollout of the programme. So since 2018, we've been going hell for leather trying to get every campus signed up to this programme. It's a free national award programme. funded by, yes, you guessed it, the Hedgehog Society. There are bronze, silver and gold certificates or award levels up for grabs, and people just really love it. So here's a photo from one of our recent teams celebrating in their most recent award from this year. What's involved in the programme is a kind of a little bit of everything. So we ask our teams or universities or campuses, if you will, to set up hedgehog groups. So they're kind of like working groups, almost a little bit like David's group, but specific to campuses, of staff and students, and in some cases, concerned citizens from the kind of local community. And they come together and they decide on a kind of action plan of hedgehog-friendly activities to perform on their campus. So every campus is a bit different. Some, really rural, some really hyper-urban, and some are somewhere in between. And they set out on, a sort of targeted action plan of activities that are either there to protect hedgehogs from the various hazards that they may be seeing on campuses and in the local area. But they're also there to enhance the habitat. So we know that hedgehogs have suffered a lot from habitat loss and a sort of lack of habitat connectivity. So we focus a lot on that kind of strand to replace some of that lost habitat and on campuses and in the local community. And then the third strand, which is really to kind of raise awareness of hedgehogs and what we can all do to help them. So that education, obviously this is a programme that sits within educational institutions, so education is a really big part of the programme as well. So anything ranging from sowing wildflower seeds to establishing, no-mow zones, to putting up slow for hedgehog signs. I said it's quite thorough, and that's in the sense that the sort of themes within the activities list really make sure that all bases are covered. So, in the early stages, we're trying to get our teams to really, get some hype around hedgehogs, try and get staff and students interested, try and promote the cause, really. So lots and lots of hedgehog-friendly campus teams at the moment I know have joined the cause, so hello, are celebrating Hedgehog Awareness Week right now, doing loads of stuff on campus to really kind of raise the profile of why hedgehogs need help. But the themes can range all the way through to, and they may sound a little bit dull and dry to you, but things like getting hedgehogs within the curriculum. So whether that's the sort of Key Stage 1 or Key Stage 2 curriculum, all the way through to degree level curriculums, because we think that people should know that hedgehogs are a threat and how they can help. And even things like making hedgehog-friendly changes be a part of the university's policies and procedures, making sure that they aren't over-mowing, making sure that wild corners are preferenced over, really manicured zones. So it's thorough. And as I say, yeah, people, staff, students alike, really love it. We work with anyone that will have us. The teams or hedgehog working groups can be made up of entirely staff, they can be made up of entirely students, or it can be a mixture of the two. And actually it's those that are the mixture of the two that tend to work really nicely. We worked with universities exclusively until just a couple of years ago. Last year we trialled an FE college and primary school programme as well, which worked really well. And we've been thankful that the Hedgehog Society have given us some further funding to make sure that we can get more FE colleges and primary schools involved this year. And that's across the whole of the UK, by the way. You don't need bags of green space to get involved to make changes for hedgehogs on your campus. As I said, we've got some even really super urban campuses. The University of London, which is right in the centre of London, is one of the teams. And there's still a load of stuff that they can do to really promote the cause for hedgehogs. And you don't need to have hedgehogs on campus already either. So if you're thinking, maybe you've got a son or a daughter at uni, maybe you're at uni, or maybe somebody at college or primary school, and you're thinking, oh, well, they've not got hedgehogs, so we'll not bother getting involved. That's really the wrong way of looking at it, because we know hedgehogs are doing so badly. We accept that there may not be hedgehogs on campuses right now, and hedgehog-friendly campus is a way to solve that problem, I suppose, to make sure that the space is suitable and safe for hedgehogs to survive and thrive. We work a lot with grounds teams, so grounds and gardens teams. So staff members that are looking after the green spaces on campus. And and often they're the most engaged of the team, actually, I suppose, because it's what they're doing day to day. So yeah, last year we expanded to primary schools and FE colleges. We had 20 of each, and most of them submitted for an award, which was really exciting. And the kids are just absolutely loving it, by the way. I mean, I suppose why wouldn't you, because it's hedgehogs, but yeah, it's been really lovely to see you know, kids from nursery age through to year 6, when you think they might be starting to get a bit too cool for things like wildlife. They just love it. You know, they love getting involved in things like litter picks and finding out where the hedgehogs or what other mammals are on there, visiting their school grounds. And it's just really lovely to see, actually, that there's so much enthusiasm. And from FE colleges as well. I know we've got Sheffield College that have joined us today. I saw one of their hedgehog volunteers has joined on the chat. So hello to Sheffield College, one of our FE college teams. So yeah, we were really lucky last year that we were able to accredit 92 institutions with an award, which was a record-breaking year, of course. 21 of those were the coveted gold awards. That's the highest award we gave out last year. 35 of those were bronze. And 36 of them were silver awards. And by gosh, the day that we launched the results, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook just blew up with people celebrating. And so it just kind of reinforces the fact that people really do love hedgehogs, and they really will, they'll put the work in, especially if they can get an award out over the other side of it. So a little bit more on kind of some of our achievements last year. We focused quite a lot on, as we do every year actually, on surveying for hedgehogs. We want to know on your university grounds, college grounds or primary school grounds, have you actually got hedgehogs there? So we do give out a lot of hedgehog footprint tunnels, which you can see in action on the video at the bottom, that pick up tracks and paw prints. As well as we loan wildlife cameras so that the teams can actually get some lovely footage, which helps them to promote the cause. So last year, hedgehogs were confirmed at 44 of the campus sites, and that's out of, I think it was just over 100 sites that did the surveys, either footprints, wildlife cameras, or a combination of the two. So a little less than half, which we think's really, really heartening. And all of those campuses are doing continued survey and monitoring work to find out in a little bit more detail the areas that they need to focus some of that habitat change on. And something's covering my screen, which is annoying. I'll see if I can move it. The Big Hedgehog Map, which I know has been mentioned a few times, bighedgehogmap.org, which is the Hedgehog Street citizen science map. We've got our own hedgehog friendly campus key, and last year 235 campus records were recorded on there. So we know hedgehogs are using campuses, we know that they are, and it's just about making sure those spaces are safe and suitable. We use the results from those surveys to inform some of the activity that happens on campus, and here's some examples of that. So just last year we had 69 hedgehog safe ponds recorded across all of our teams using things like hedgehog escape ramps, stacked sandbags and that kind of thing. Some of the ways in which you can make your pond a little bit more safe and suitable for hedgehogs, because hedgehogs can fall in and get trapped and drown, unfortunately. And a lot of campuses tend to have ornamental ponds because it looks pretty. So yeah, this is an example from Leeds Beckett Uni, a really, really great example of a pond. It doesn't even have any water in it, that pond. They just wanted to be double sure, which is nice. 239 recorded habitat piles were created across all of our sites, which was really great to see. So these habitat piles, as you heard in that last video, are really important to support hedgehogs and other wildlife because they act as a bit of a refuge for hedgehogs, but they also are a way to kind of promote that natural food source for them as well. 62 teams installed hedgehog houses. So these were either pre-bought ones or in a lot of cases they were DIY ones made of bricks. Bricks with a paving slab on the top could work just as well as one that you can buy from the shops. So that was really lovely to see. And there's a fab image from Reading University of one of their hedgehog houses there. And 30 hedgehog crossing signs were installed across campuses across the whole of the UK as well. So it was a big year for protecting hedgehogs from hazards. And we're really proud to see all of the teams contributing to that. We had a lot of litter busting going on across the year, and this is a really continued kind of campaign area for a lot of the volunteers that get involved in Hedgehog Friendly Campus. Lots of litter picking going on across the year, and then we do have a competition in September, October time. The big Hog Friendly Litter Pick Challenge. We had over 1,000 participants and around 800 bags of litter were collected there. Some examples from here. We've got the famed Sheffield College here, and we've got Hadlow College down at the bottom as well. Yeah, lots and lots of litter picking and litter busting, because litter and rubbish and trash on the ground can really be a problem for hedgehogs and other animals. They can get trapped. They can really injure themselves. They can starve. Litter is a big problem, and we know that that's the case. So lots and lots of teams out there doing some fab litter picking. We will be running that competition again this year as well. I mentioned that we've got lots of input from grounds teams and gardens teams, which is absolutely definitely the case. The People's Trust and Hedgehog Society training course that Grace mentioned earlier on, they were very kind to let us use the training course with our grounds teams, and that's been delivered just last year. So last year alone to 140 grounds team staff across 22 different institutions. We're hoping to kind of roll that out and get more staff involved this year, but it just shows the kind of the real passion and drive, I think, from those universities and colleges. 92 of the teams involved, so this is across schools, colleges and universities, are now using strimmer warning stickers. Something really simple that you could do, you even get in touch with your local council grounds team, is just to have a simple warning sign on your strimmers and mowers, so that operators know to check the grass or the base of the hedge for hedgehogs before they do operate that machinery. And the Hedgehog Friendly Campus teams have really bought into that one, and they do have processes actually that they follow to make sure that they are checking, and that's passed along to all the staff, and it's really lovely to see. And sometimes we get photos in of them, like this, really celebrating. That's from Coventry Uni there, really celebrating their fabulous stickers. 18 hedgehog highways were created last year as well. What's great about campuses, so this is the case definitely for uni and college campuses, is they tend to be quite open anyway. So if hedgehogs are in the area, then you're very likely to get them coming to visit your campus. It's just a case of making sure it's safe and suitable for them. But what's been really lovely is that those campuses have been looking anyway for opportunities for hedgehog highways. And in some cases, these are a little bit off the beaten path. They're not on the main campus, but perhaps they're on the kind of university accommodation. And so, yeah, we are still getting those hedgehog highways, and that understanding of why habitat connectivity is of such a benefit for hedgehogs. And so that's really lovely to see. This is an example from Fitzwilliam College in Cambridge, and you can see the hedgehog highway plaque at the top there from Hedgehog Street's team. Pride of place. So I thought you might want to hear from a team themselves. So actually we've got the University of Lincoln's Hedgehog Friendly Campus champion, Alex, on this video here to talk a little bit about how Lincoln University and the team at Lincoln University achieved their Gold Award. It's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek video. It's very nice. It was produced by the Lincoln University Student Services, but they've told us we can use it for the purposes of today. So just you can have a little listen to what they've been up to.
Did you know the University of Lincoln is a hedgehog-friendly campus? I'm Laura and I'm here to find out more with Alex.
Hello, my name is Alex Foxley-Johnson and I'm part of the University of Lincoln's Estates and Sustainability teams. I'm also the Hedgehog Friendly Campus lead at the University of Lincoln. We've been a Hedgehog Friendly Campus for a few years now. Hedgehog Friendly Campus is a national campaign supported and funded by the British Hedgehog Preservation Society. We're pretty active on campus actually. We like to think we're a pretty big deal now.
Oh, that was a humble brag and I'm here for it. I love that.
As part of Hedgehog Friendly Campus, there are a few things that we have to do landscape-wise and in the local area. So one of the things that we've done, probably our biggest thing, is change the way we manage some areas on our landscape. So that includes rewilding certain parts of our campus and also sowing wildflower meadows that not only benefit hedgehogs but benefit your wild birds. The rewilded areas tend to be spaces that we've just left to go completely natural. So when you come over and it might look a little bit untidy at times, it's actually been there for a reason. happen. It's not just because we're like, oh, we couldn't be bothered to cut that down.
I've seen these around campus and I'm guessing they aren't just piles of logs. Could you tell me what they actually are?
This is one of our hedgehog habitats. It's a habitat for hedgehogs. We've got a few of them. It's a dedicated log pile. We've also got a little insect hotel here as well.
Is it 5 stars?
I'd probably say 3.5.
Oof. I might take my booking elsewhere then.
Yeah. These log piles do a really valuable thing. So not only do they increase insect biodiversity, which obviously hedgehogs eat, but they also provide hidey holes as well for those and other small mammals.
Clearly I am looking at a work of art here, honestly, but could you tell me how were these made and what that black contraption is?
So this is called a mammal survey tunnel. We survey regularly what mammals we've got on campus, particularly hedgehogs. These are made by hedgehogs. So they are absolutely immense. So these were taken over the summer. So we run survey tunnels over 5 days. We put fresh bait in every day. So with hedgehogs, it's cat biscuits or dog biscuits or meat. We create 2 ink pads. So that's just with some masking tape there and some vegetable oil and food grade charcoal. And we replace the bait every day, check it, replace these pads every day. And we see what we've got. And we do full training through Hedgehog Friendly Campus and the University of Lincoln's team on that. So you can learn how to do this and then run your own survey.
I'm hearing rumours that we're award winning.
Yeah, so the University of Lincoln is actually a gold accredited Hedgehog Friendly Campus.
Yeah,
it's the best one. There are 3, bronze, silver and gold, and we've now got all 3. If you like what you've seen in this video, then you can get involved in our Hedgehog Friendly Campus team by emailing environment@lincoln.ac.uk.
I certainly feel I know a lot more about the hedgehogs here at the campus, and I hope you do too. So thank you for watching.
Really nice. So yeah, loads of really great stuff happening. Well done to Lincoln for gaining your gold award. So this year we've got a really exciting year. Just today, in fact, this is hot off the press. We've launched our website, which has been a few years in the offing. You can find it at hedgehogfriendlycampus.co.uk. It's got loads of information on what the project actually does. It's got information on the team. There's 2 of us now. It's me and lovely Bethany Holmes, who's joined us on the chat today, who's actually, I must thank for lots of things, for just generally being amazing. But she's made the website. She made it from scratch and it's amazing. It's got loads of really great information on there. It looks fantastic. It's even got a blog on there, so keep your eye on the blog. We're going to have some poetry. We're going to have some blogs from teams. We're going to have some updates on what we've been doing. So yeah, go hedgehogfriendlycampus.co.uk to check out that new website. Well done, Bethany. As well as this year, we're going to be doing the big Hog Friendly Litter Pick Challenge again. So this is a national competition for all campuses to get involved in, whether you're a school or a uni, whatever. That starts in September and runs for a month. It's all about collecting the most litter. There are prizes. So far, it's been hedgehog houses. We'll see what the prize will be this year. We're going to be doing lots and lots more surveying. The survey season has already begun, begins at the end of April. So loads and loads of teams out there doing surveys on their campus right at this very moment to find out where the hedgehogs are and where they need to target those actions. One of those actions is taking part in No Mow May. I saw a few people mention this in the chat box. It's one of the activities that teams can get involved in. And we do actively encourage it. So it's a plant life initiative that just asks for grounds teams to put down their mowers and strimmers for the month of May and let the wildflowers grow, just like Lincoln have been doing. And so lots of teams getting involved in that. We also have a Hedgehog Week activity pack for primary schools, which again, just a shout out to Bethany. Thank you so much for putting that together because it's fantastic. It's got loads of really great interactive activities that primary school pupils can get involved in, led by their teachers. So if we've got any primary school teachers here, the link should be going into the chat box very shortly for where you can access that digital activity pack. Lots of really good outdoor classroom resources in there. They're all curriculum linked, all actually from the People's Trust for Endangered Species. Fantastic resources. Some colouring, some ideas for baking in there, and there's even some like quizzes and crosswords and stuff. There's loads of really fab stuff. So the link should be in the chat box for anybody that would like to share it with their local school. So we've got a big year, as well as the addition of a new platinum level. So for teams that have achieved gold, university teams will get the chance to go for a platinum level, which will all be about making their own hedgehog friendly project on their campus, as opposed to doing defined actions. So it's a very exciting year, lots going on. Yeah, we're really looking forward to getting more campuses involved. Oh, and a really quick video. We did a competition. It doesn't close until the end of this week, but for our hedgehog friendly schools, which is all about how basically making their own hedgehog anthem. So, you know, like a bit like a fight song. And this is one of the submissions that we had from Westview Primary School that I just thought was really lovely. So it's short, so I just wanted to quickly show you because it's really nice.
Hedgehog, hedgehog, brown and small, very prettily and I crawl. Build my nest, leaves are best. I'm nocturnal, I'm quite shy. Spiky, spiky on the ground. Shuffle, shuffle without a sound. We love hedgehogs!
I just love it. But yeah, there we go. Thank you very much. And any questions?
Thanks so much, Jo. It was really, really good to hear about the project. It is a fantastic project. It was really good to hear from the Lincoln team as well, and that anthem at the end is fantastic. That was so good. Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to sort of mention as well that, yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic project, and it's been lovely to see it kind of grow and develop over the last couple of years. And that's all, I'm going to embarrass Jo, but it's all thanks to Jo, because she's just putting in endless hard work, and I feel like you've poured your heart and soul into it, and it's really paying off because it's such a fantastic project. So just singing your praises, just giving you a
thanks.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, because Jo and I work quite closely together, because yeah, as she mentioned, we've sort of shared resources and we're sort of in touch quite a lot. So yeah, fantastic project. So a couple of questions have come in. Let's have a quick look. So people mentioning sort of where the project could potentially go next. Have you got any thoughts? You know, are we talking hedgehog friendly churchyards, hedgehog friendly hospitals? They're not quite campuses, but I feel like, but then you sort of can't go everywhere, can it? It's you know, it's only 2 people at the moment. What do you reckon?
We're focusing on educational institutions for now, but yeah, there are wider applications for the kind of model, I suppose, and we've been approached by parish councils, local councils, NHS hospital buildings, and there are these similar kinds of accreditation schemes that do very similar stuff. So there's no reason why we couldn't in the future, but for now there's an awful lot of work to be done, universities, colleges and primary schools, so we're going to stick with them for now.
Definitely, that sounds good. So you're mentioning that it sort of works best when the group is a combination of students and staff, which makes sense because of course students are going to sort of graduate and you know, they're not potentially going to be there long term. But do you find that in terms of when people are starting these groups, is it mostly students? Is it mostly staff? Or is it a bit of a split? It's just quite interesting to know who's kind of getting the ball rolling on the different campuses.
That's a good question. Those that tend to get the ball rolling, it tends to be staff within what are called the estates team. So that all universities and colleges have this team where it's just the people that manage the building. So they often have like a sustainability person or a biodiversity person. So it often tends to be them. But then, you know, there are some teams, I'm trying to think of an example, Swansea University, who are amazing actually. As far as I'm aware, the student driven, and that's the case for Stirling University as well. Lots and lots of teams out there that manage to do it just by being student driven, which is kind of amazing really when you think about it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think there's a few teams have been popping up in the chat as well, so you've got some of your campuses here. I had a question, but it's gone from my mind. Does it usually take, so obviously you've got your bronze, silver and gold, does it usually take an academic year to sort of reach each of those, or can it vary? I suppose it's based on people's effort, isn't it? But do you find that it's about a year, or is it longer for gold, or is it?
Yeah, so it takes about a year for each level.
Okay.
So it's slightly different for primary schools, who are allowed to just go in for whatever level. Whereas colleges and unis have to work their way through the levels. But we tend to work on a sort of year by year basis. And so all of the teams that got gold last year have been working at it for 3 years.
Fantastic, that's really good. Well, yeah, thanks so much for sharing all your information, all the work that you've been doing. It's really good to hear from you, and fantastic project for those who want to check it out. And if there are any campuses left in the UK who aren't signed up, get involved. I don't think there's any left. I think you've got them all.
There's a few.
But yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're getting a little bit towards the end of our time slot. We might run a bit over, so if anybody does have to leave, don't worry, we'll send the recording round afterwards. But our final speaker this evening is Hugh Warwick. You might know him as Hedgehog Hugh. He's researched hedgehogs, he's written books about hedgehogs, he's campaigned for hedgehogs, he's raised awareness of hedgehogs. I think he's pretty much got every hedgehog item you could physically own in his possession. So yeah, I couldn't think of a better person to just round off this evening's proceedings. So Hugh.
Hello, let me just get this up and running, and here we go. Thank you, and thank you very much to Grace and the team at the PTES who have pulled this thing together. A quite amazing crowd of people to have. But next time, we should have a festival. A hedgehog-based festival, get us all together, be much more fun. Anyway, so campaigning hedgehogs. I was trying to work out whether this should be campaigning with hedgehogs or campaigning for hedgehogs, but yeah, so I'll just stick with campaigning hedgehogs. Obviously, lots and lots of this work has been generated by the by the British Hedgehog Preservation Society, and I am a spokesperson for the Hedgehog Society. And as was mentioned earlier, yes, on Saturday we celebrated our 40th birthday, and we had sort of shout outs on social media. It's quite fun to see who's been co-opted into hedgehog love. But yeah, we got Steve Backshall, Megan McCubbin, Fern Cotton, and then even Stephen Fry. Now this is all fantastic. So really, the exciting thing is just quite how many people love hedgehogs, and this is a point which has been raised time and time again. People really do love hedgehogs. Thank goodness, because I've written 3 books about them. This is a shameless plug. I was thinking about how to make my talk shorter, but I thought I wasn't going to lose this bit. Do feel a sudden urge to go and read books about hedgehogs. You'll find them fun and entertaining. But I'm often asked why I keep spending my time studying hedgehogs. I started back in 1986 studying hedgehogs up in Orkney. And most people who start their sort of student days studying one species tend to move on. They'll start studying mice, and then maybe study hedgehogs, and then maybe study badgers, and then maybe end up studying elephants or something. But I started studying hedgehogs and then just kind of stuck with it. And really, why all that effort and time spent studying hedgehogs? Well, it's because every time there's a vote or a poll as for the nation's favorite animal, the nation's favorite nature icon, or whatever it will be, the hedgehog always wins. And it may seem like a really trivial reason to base one's entire sort of work life on, is the fact that the animal is popular. But actually, that's a really valuable part of this work. I do hundreds of talks around the place, and a lot of them are to groups such as Women's Institute groups, Townswomen's Guilds, University of the Third Age, gardening clubs, and these are people who want me to come and talk about hedgehogs, because hedgehogs are something obviously we care about. But each of those talks ends up being a discussion about the national planning policy framework, transport infrastructure, how we grow food, or possibly the necessity of dismantling industrial capitalism. All of these things that are taking place, because what we've essentially got here is a Trojan hedgehog. It's a way of talking about really complicated ecological issues using this one extremely charismatic and gorgeous animal. So I love hedgehogs. I have the tattoo, as well as all of the various artifacts which I get given. But I really love nature. I love wildlife, and the hedgehog is a fantastic tool by which to talk about the ways we can benefit the natural world, ways we can work with and for the natural world. And as has been discussed this evening, one of the biggest problems that hedgehogs face, one of the biggest causes of this really disturbing population decline, one of the reasons why hedgehogs are now on the red list, is due to habitat fragmentation. And the Hedgehog Street idea, as Grace talks about, is based around the idea of overcoming this act of fragmentation. And we can how do we overcome this fragmentation? We make these holes in fences, as Joel was talking about. Really straightforward idea. You make the connectivity. How do you make the holes in a fence? Well, obviously the easiest way to do it is to get one angry hedgehog and a large catapult, and then you kind of ping it right at the base of the fence. This is the Cherwell Boathouse who tried that technique. No hedgehogs were hurt in the production of this hole. But the idea of overcoming these barriers is one which was taken on perhaps best by a village north of where I am in Oxford, in Kirtlington, in the foothills of the Cotswolds. And I've been and talked to the Kirtlington Wildlife and Conservation Society, yes, they are the quacks, on a number of occasions about various work I've done. And eventually, Chris Powles, who runs the show, amongst others, just said, look, okay, we'll do something about hedgehogs. And what they did was get a detailed map of the village and work out the minimum number of holes that would need to be made to create the maximum amount of connectivity around the village. This meant going full sort of Neolithic tomb design for some of them. It meant talking with the keepers of the churchyard. It meant waiting for people who may not have been quite so helpful to eventually move out of the village so that nicer people could be co-opted into making holes into their gardens. And this is the way these projects really work. We can do stuff on our own. And I mean, the reason why I love Joe's work with the Hedgehog Friendly Campus is, individually we can do our own bit, but it's when we spread that word out and other people get engaged and other people get involved and you create a Hedgehog Friendly Campus, or as Dave was doing, getting your entire group up and running. We can't do it ourselves. We need a community of people. So they've done wonderful things in Kirtlington. However, Chris's garden is 2.5 feet lower than his neighbours, and I'd asked him what he was going to do about that. And he said he was going to build a staircase, which he did. Now, I mean, he's quite a funny guy, and obviously this is just for show. But on the very first night the staircase was in action, a hedgehog came out of the hole at the top, paused at the top, and then I like to think sort of took in the surroundings before sashaying down the staircase. He had been baiting top and bottom beforehand, encouraging the hedgehogs to be there. And then a year or so after that, he sent me a video of the staircase in action. If you watch this video closely, you'll notice that hedgehogs can use the staircase going both forwards and backwards. And if you pay particular attention, you might notice a design flaw. Now I now have asked them to put in a banister at the top, just to save the indignity of collapsing off the top of the staircase. I mean, luckily hedgehog spines are fantastic shock absorbers as well. So I don't think the hedgehog was dented in anything other than dignity. And I went to see Chris a few, God, it'd been last year now. I was doing an article for BBC Wildlife magazine, needed to take a photograph of him. And he said, you've got to see what I've done now. And he was so excited. And he took me to one of his neighbours who'd got an even bigger height difference between gardens. And I just think this is absolute genius. I mean, it's a really effective little ramp he's got there. And does it work? Well, of course it works. Though I'm sort of imagining putting little gold hoops along here and having a ting, ting, ting. Yeah, so like real life Sonic the Hedgehog. So anyway, these holes, they work. You build these holes, hedgehogs will come. And yes, as Joel was saying, if you can make holes yourselves or you can replace the gravel boards, the fence manufacturers are on board. This is very exciting. But wouldn't it be good if we didn't have to do it all ourselves? Because actually, it is quite hard work creating these holes. And so a while back, now 3 years ago, I was contacted by change.org. And I'm really, really, really hoping that all 300 of you or so that are there at the moment have already signed my petition. But if there are some of you who haven't, hopefully in the chat box now, you'll get a direct link and you can go through and do this. I was asked if I wanted to set up a petition to try and return hedgehogs to their former glory, is how change.org put it. And a lovely idea that was too. I mean, I've been waiting 30 odd years for this opportunity. And this was the opportunity to find a question, find a demand. And they asked me what I should do. What would I like to see changed to see hedgehogs return to their former glory? And I said, well, that's simple. We need to dismantle industrial capitalism and replace it with something nicer. And they said, no. And in the end, we created a petition which is so small that I was almost embarrassed to lobby for it. But they made it very persuasive. They said, by doing this, everybody who signs the petition, every time you write an update, they get an email update. And consider it your blog to talk about hedgehog things. And so suddenly, when we had 100,000 people signing a petition, hoping to, asking to get the Secretary of State for Housing to change the national planning policy framework so that hedgehog highways had to be a part of all new housing developments, I was thinking, gosh, 100,000 people, that feels like a bit of power. And then the numbers started to increase. We got to 500,000 people, and I got to meet the then housing minister and the boss of one of the biggest housing developers as well. And it was like, oh, things are really beginning to take off. We had an approach from we worked with Bovis Homes. They then bought out Linden Homes. So the Vistre group now are working with us. We've got Taylor Wimpey working as well, committed to making new developments hedgehog friendly. Now, we're not allowing greenwash with this. If they're doing stupid developments in stupid places, we'll complain about it and we'll campaign against it. And as Grace mentioned earlier, we are campaigning to get the hedgehogs shifted up the schedules of the Wildlife and Countryside Act to try and give it more protection. But at least in this instance, we're making some progress with getting the hedgehogs some sort of benefit with the great rash of housing development around the country. So we've got to a point where something over 500,000 people, and then, oh, wait a minute, we had a moment of absolute and profound importance. No, not the moment that I got to over 1 million signatures, which is quite nice, but when I wrote a BBC Wildlife magazine article, I got a tweet was put out by Tom Holland, calling me the Lorax of hedgehogs. Now, the Lorax of hedgehogs is an accolade which one can only dream of. But more than that, the greatest accolade came with the fact that for about 5 minutes, my teenage daughter was impressed with me and my work. Due to a slight misunderstanding and her thought that this Tom Holland was Spider-Man Tom Holland and not Tom Holland, the former Radio 4 presenter and historian. So anyway, it was nice while it lasted, but it shows this petition is beginning to go. We've got a lot of ground covered, and I'm still maintaining it because, well, government's been a bit busy doing other things of late. Now, because there's over 1 million people signing this petition, and whenever I do an update, there's an awful lot of discussion beneath it, I set up a Hedgehog Highways Facebook group. There's nearly 20,000 members in that now. This deals with a lot of the questions. I see questions coming up in the chat for this event today, which are the sort of questions which pop along onto the group. They'll be answered on there. And thank you. I don't know whether Rose and Jackie are out there, my two moderators, but without them, this couldn't happen. So thank you so much to that. But the Hedgehog Highways is a great way of community beginning to form around this as well. And it's meant that people have begun to get the idea of how they can do things themselves. There's one gentleman from Jonathan Housego from Suffolk contacted me. His village was surrounded by 3 new developments were about to take place, housing developments. And he wrote and asked what he could do about this. And I just simply suggested that he writes to each of them, goes and knocks on the door of the show home or whatever and talks to them. And the first one was Linden Homes, and they were already putting hedgehog highways in place. He was like, oh, this is easy. The next one was a smaller family developer, and they said, this sounds like a really great idea. And so suddenly, you have an individual willing to do this, things will happen. And he went to the third developer, Persimmon, and they pretty much laughed in his face and said, don't be ridiculous. And so he came back to me and we talked again about this. And over a period of a few months, polite, persistent letters went back and forth. And in the end, even Persimmon relented and put in the hedgehog highways. Putting in hedgehog highways is not the be all and end all of these things. We need to have far more work done in the management of our landscape to help hedgehogs, but it's a step in the right direction. And by doing that, we're kind of pushing developers into a corner because they can't then go and do something really stupid, because then it would look like they were just using the hedgehog highways as greenwash, which would be something we would campaign about. So it really can make a difference. You do this work, you make the connections, you make the holes, you make the connections in the community, and you make the connections with developers. Great things can happen. So use the resources we've got, the Facebook group, the petition site, Hedgehog Street campaign, Hedgehog Friendly Campus, any of your local hedgehog groups, use those and see how we can take things further, because we hedgehogs are such a crucial and an important creature. And I will just leave you with this one thought, that the big issue obviously trumped it here with the best cover ever, Save the Hedgehog, Save the World. The hedgehog is easily the most important creature on the planet, and that is an entire essay in itself I will go into at some other stage. But being aware of the fact that we have now already overrun, I will pause and let any questions which need answering be answered. And again, please, could you in some way, I don't know, waving at the screen or sending a note in the chat, thank Grace and her team for making this whole thing happen, because it's a wonderful event. So thank you very much indeed.
Thanks so much, Hugh. That was a really interesting talk as ever. And there's a few people who've signed the petition as well during that talk when we shared the link. So we've got a few extra signatures, which is always good, pushing to the 2 million mark, hopefully. Yeah, it's fantastic. And the stuff you were saying about the developers, like you say, it's a step in the right direction. It's some of these national companies that we're working with, and we're not letting them greenwash us, which we're really trying to sort of get the message out there. And hopefully these more and more new build sites are going to have hedgehog highways, which is fantastic, which is just what we want. So I'm going to ask you to put your ecologist hat on now, because a couple of people were asking a bit earlier why they haven't seen their hedgehog for a few nights, or even since hibernation. Could you shed a little bit of light on hedgehog behavior and what might be happening there, just what if there's any missing hedgehogs?
Okay, well, the first thing, which is a study I did in the early 1990s, radio tracking hedgehogs with Pat Morris, and what that showed was that despite the best efforts on the part of us, hedgehogs are not immortal. And they are prone to all of those other contingencies that happen to other mortal. So there is a simple factor that hedgehogs will die. An old hedgehog is 7 years old, but most hedgehogs don't actually make it to their first birthday. So there is that side of it. But also remember, looking at the amazing Lauren's work, wasn't it? Look at the tracks, the GPS tags, the hedgehogs. They can move a couple of kilometers a night. They can have a home range of 30 hectares. Male hedgehog can have a home range of 30 hectares. This is a big area. And so they may well be off around a neighbour's garden. Often you'll find this thing that people have, their hedgehog turns out to be 6 different hedgehogs. Or their hedgehog that religiously comes to their garden is visiting 6 other gardens too. I don't know if you remember, was it Six Dinner Sid? Lovely kids story book I used to read to my children. Six Dinner Sid, anyway, about a cat that just had 6 different owners who all thought it was theirs. So don't be worried by the fact that your hedgehog might not be coming back, because your hedgehog might be a number of different hedgehogs. But also the fact that the hedgehog has been in the garden means A, they've got access, and B, there are hedgehogs. So both those things are awesome.
Lovely, thank you so much for that. I'm glad you followed up on the home ranges. I thought you were just going to say they're not immortal. That's it. I was thinking we need some hope. But yeah, thanks so much for answering that. I think that's probably a good place to finish off proceedings. So just a couple of quick notes. Thank you for all the lovely messages in the chat. The chat's been really, really busy. I've seen so many messages popping through, and sadly we just couldn't get through them all. But there's Hugh's Facebook group, there's the Hedgehog Street website, hedgehogstreet.org. You can drop us an email. There's lots of ways to get your questions answered. We're more than happy to answer questions, so please do send them in. And yeah, thanks so much to all the speakers this evening. It's been fantastic hearing about all the different things that are going on. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us. And thank you to everyone as well who's attended. It's been lovely. It's fantastic to see so many of you, and a lovely way to celebrate Hedgehog Awareness Week as well with so many of you here. So thank you very much for coming. We haven't run an online talk before, so I hope it's all gone well. I hope there's not been any major disasters that have passed me by, but it's been lovely. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a really nice evening. Sorry, we've overrun a little bit. There was people saying in the chat that they had to go and feed their hedgehogs in the garden. So we're a very niche audience, so that's absolutely fine. Do go and feed your hedgehogs. I wanted to say a quick thank you as well to everyone who kindly made a donation when they registered for their tickets. Thanks so much for that. We'll drop a link in the chat as well in case anybody wants to make a donation sort of afterwards. So thanks so much for that. That's all going to go towards our our hedgehog conservation work. And then, yeah, I think the last thing to say is just happy Hedgehog Awareness Week. There's lots happening on social media. There's lots of competitions, lots of lovely videos and things being shared. So do keep an eye out. enjoy the rest of Hedgehog Week. I think that's a good point to call it a night. So thanks so much for coming, everybody, and yeah, take care. Happy Hedgehog Awareness Week.
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you, everybody.
Grace, well done.
Thank you. Cheers, everybody.